Okay, so I'm recording now. Let's just quickly look at what we made last time. So last time I just added a few basic things. My character starts on this sort of large platform in the middle, and by putting nothing to the left side, I'm sort of indicating like even though I can move the character over here, that's probably not what I want to do. I probably don't want to fall off the side of this cliff here. And so that's one form of guidance is sort of saying like there's nothing over here. And then another form of guidance we see on the right where we have like a sign. It has a snake on it, so we're kind of indicating what's over here. And then there's a platform there, so that tells me that if I jump on that platform, I'll probably see some other stuff over there. Then we also have introducing our first mechanic, which is that the cat can jump, which, you know, a lot of games have, but we still have to bring each one of these mechanics in so the player can have the chance to see how this works before they're confronted with other types of obstacles. So I have this jump here, which should be basically pretty easy to achieve, and it is. So now I'm like, okay, I can jump. And so I continue along, and now I have a slightly harder jump, and I'm also starting to see a little bit more of the level, and starting to, get a sense of what some of the obstacles might be. And what we see here is we might consider this a little foreshadowing, because I can see those snakes down there, they can move. However, this snake that's sort of blocking my path right there is not moving. So that tells me that I might have to be a little bit careful, and also have to be better at jumping when I go over here. And so now that triggers this snake. And I can jump on the snake to kill it, and then I can get down here. And then what I want to do here, actually, before I do any branching and bottling, I've given my player a couple of challenges. So now, why don't I give the player some type of reward to kind of indicate, you know, you did a good job, you sort of got through these challenges. So I'll do that, and then I'll give the player a choice of what to do next. So I'm going to go to my tile map to add some more platforms to start setting up these new components. So I'm just going to get my grass platform and make a new little platform right here. Make it kind of small, and so we'll give the player a reward here, either like a pickup item or an extra life, something like that. Maybe both. Either one of those would be good. And then once we do that, let's give the player a couple options so we can start doing some branching. So maybe I'll have like some big tile down here, and I'll put some snakes on there. And then above this big tile, maybe I'll put like some really small jumps like this. So we'll be able to see there's a bit of a challenge there. And the player will have to choose between the challenge of lots of snakes or the challenge of a bunch of jumps. And I'll just put a few of these over here, and of course I need to test them out. So I want to kind of go between creating stuff and testing stuff, so I don't like create a bunch of stuff and then realize that it's impossible or it's not fun or whatever. So let's go ahead and put some rewards right here to reward our player. I'm going to click on my main level node, and right now I have my tile map, my player, and my obstacles. So I'm going to make another 2D node to use as sort of a folder or organizer for my rewards. So I'll just type in node 2D and hit enter, and I'll rename this rewards. And I have a couple different types of rewards that I created. One is like an apple that's sort of like a coin that you can collect, and then the other is a extra life. So let's just throw some apples on here. We want to make it a little challenging, so if we give the player an extra life like this early on, it's going to probably make it a little too easy. Of course, there's no specific rules. You got to test it and find the balance of challenge versus, rewards. So I'm going to click on my little link button to instantiate a component, and my apple component is the one I want to make. So I'll put it right there. It's going to be back at the origin by default, which is like all the way over here. So I'd either have to like go back and find it and drag it, or one thing that I might do once I'm already over here, if you look at this ruler up here, you can actually see the X value and the Y value here, just like you would be able to in Photoshop if you had the ruler open. So what I could do is just click on my apple over here, go over to the inspector, open up my transform, and just find the position I want from there. So this is like 1220. So I'll do 1220 as the X position, and then the Y is like 100 something, 112. Let's try that. Okay, so there we go. So now we've got our apple over here. We didn't have to drag around and, you know, fight with the where they're sorted and all that stuff. So we've got our apple in here. I think it should already be connected and set up, so I'm not going to add anything here, but we'll test it in a second. And if I want to give the player a couple apples to kind of enhance the feeling of reward, I can hit Command D and make a new apple and maybe do it one more time. And of course, you know, I can design this and add as many as I want to give the player a nice sense of reward. And then now what I'll do is add in my branching decision point here. And actually, I might need to make my tile map a little bit bigger, because after I do this, I'm going to make like a little bottleneck area. So I'm just going to throw that in there. So the challenge here is basically the player deciding between going down and, you know, going against all these snakes that are going to be down here. And I'll make this even more like this, so there's no, you know, it's easy to get down. So they're either going to have to go down here, or they're going to have to go through some jumps. So they're going to choose which challenge they want to try. So I'll find my obstacles, and I'll do the same kind of thing I did here. I have a bunch of enemies, and I don't really want to go back and find where those enemies are. If I wanted to, I could click on an enemy and then hit F, and it would find that enemy for me, and then I could duplicate it and move it. But if I'm over here and I don't want to have to kind of toggle back and forth, I can go to my scene view. I can hit Command D on enemy 5, and that'll create a new enemy. And then I'll just use my coordinates with the ruler again to get that over to where I want it. So I'll click on the enemy, go to transform, and then I'm at like 1344 on X. And for Y, it's like maybe 2 something, like maybe 208. So now I've got an enemy here, and now I want to make this like, you know, I want to make them, you know, have to really think about, do I want to go on the platforms or do I want to go with all these snakes? So I'm going to make a whole bunch of them. So I'm just going to hit Command D and make a bunch of these snakes. And they'll be walking around, so by the time the player gets over here, they should be a little bit more, you know, kind of distributed. And so I'm going to make this really like as scary as possible. And if I want to do a little layering, I forgot that I have another obstacle that I could throw in here. So let's add our other obstacle in here as well. So that'll create even more of a sense of sort of challenge for the player. So my other obstacle is this flower thing. So I'll open that up, and then I'm not going to go look for it because that'll take time. What I'm going to do is go to transform. I'm going to set the X and Y. So I'll set this to 1376 based on the ruler, and then 224 based on the Y-axis. And so now I'll put this like flower here, and then I'll make a bunch of those as well. And so this is, you know, I'm really upping the level of challenge pretty quickly here. You don't have to do this, but just to kind of show a couple different examples at the same time, we're now layering in this new challenge. And so really sort of testing the player in terms of whether they're going to try to do this new challenge or whether they're going to avoid it and just jump up here. And, you know, so now I want to test this, and I want to try both options. And I want to make sure that they're equally challenging, because if one is really easy and the other's not, then it won't really be that good of a choice. So what I'm actually going to do to test this, to save myself a little bit of time, is I'm going to take the player, and instead of playing through the whole beginning of the level, I'm going to move the player right here to this sort of reward safe space zone. So I don't have to like play through the whole beginning of the level just to get here. So I'll do the same thing. I'll click on the player and then find a point using my ruler, go to the transform, and I'll set this to 1248 and 64. Okay, so here's my player. So now I don't have to play the whole thing. I can just start testing. So I'm going to run this. Okay, so I got the apples, and so now we see the player has this choice. There's a lot of snakes, and there's this new weird flower-looking thing. So probably, okay, I fell off. Probably what I'm going to try to do first is jump on these platforms, and this is definitely pretty easy, so it's not really much of a choice. Oh, and those flowers are way too close together. So the level of challenge between these two is way off balance. So I'm gonna go and edit this a little bit. I'm just gonna delete some of the flowers. So let's delete every other flower. Oh, I have to hit Command Delete. So I'm gonna delete every other flower. So I guess I'll just do the odd flowers. Okay, so we have less flowers. And another thing I could do is maybe make these jumps a little harder by removing one of these tiles. So that'll make it a lot harder. And so my player will have a more difficult choice to make, which is what's going to make our game more exciting. Especially since I have a slidey player. I make it a little less slidey because it is pretty hard. So let's turn the friction up just a little bit. I'll turn it up to like 300 so the player doesn't slide quite as much. It is still quite a challenge now that there's just one thing. So I fell off there. So that's a good sign. Eventually, obviously, as I'm testing it, I'll probably get much better at the game. So at a certain point, my testing will give me some information, but it won't be that useful. At a certain point, I need to get other people to test to see what does it look like if somebody who didn't actually design the game tries playing it, because that's going to be very different. But that's what we'll do in a couple weeks. Okay, so last thing, we've done this branching, and so now we need to figure out a way to get to the next part of the game. So we could have the platforms keep going and have like one whole section. We could have the snakes keep going and have a whole section there. Or what we can do is bottleneck and bring both of these sections back to the same place. And so what I'll do, maybe I'll make like a little mountain here to block the snakes a little bit. So they'll be kind of contained over there. And then I'll have a new section down here, and I'll put a couple more tiles to let the player jump down here. And so this is a bottleneck. So there's a branch where my player has to choose between these two challenges, and then we have a bottleneck down here. And so that kind of gives the player a chance to relax and say, oh, you know, that was fun. Let's see what's going to happen next. And then we can introduce some more challenges. So that's pretty much all I'm going to go over for now. I'll give you guys some time to, you know, add some stuff into your level and try out different things. And just remember, keep testing stuff, because if you make a bunch of stuff and then you realize it's impossible, then you're just going to have to delete it, and that's going to be annoying. So always be testing stuff, and if you get too good, get somebody else to test it too, so you can have a sense of what it looks like when somebody's actually going to play it for the first time. Okay, so for this assignment, video documentation is really going to be kind of the best option to see what the level looks like. You can, of course, take screenshots, and it would be good to have both. You can have a screenshot of like, here's the first part of my level, here's the first example of branching, here's the first, layering example that I added here. So it's showing screenshots of like each component will be really useful for documentation. And then having a video where we actually see what it looks like when the player plays the game will also be very helpful. So I think I've already talked about doing that, so I won't review it now. But I recommend doing both some screenshots and a video when you do documentation for this level. So I'm going to stop the video here.